Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into one of the most intricately designed, highly specialized manufacturing plants in the entire human body, the male reproductive system. Seriously, I want you to picture this system not just as a static collection of organs, but as a completely relentless, dynamic biological factory. It's got assembly lines, strict quality control, specialized caretakers, a highly complex shipping department, and a very demanding chief executive officer pulling the strings from the top down. It is a masterclass in cellular engineering, and we're going to break the whole thing down step by step.
Here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. 1. The male reproductive factory. 2. Sertoli cells, the caretakers. 3. Spermatogenesis, the assembly line. 4. Maturation and capacitation. And 5. The power of testosterone.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the male reproductive factory.
Okay, let's dive into the biological layout. To really orient ourselves, we need to split these structures into two categories, external and internal. On the outside, we have the penis and the scrotum. Now, the scrotum isn't just a pouch. It actually acts as a critical climate control system. It keeps the testes about 2 degrees Celsius lower than your normal core body temperature, which, by the way, is an absolute requirement for production. If it's too warm, the whole line shuts down. Then, safely hidden away inside the body, we have the internal manufacturing and shipping centers, the testes, epididymis, vas deferens, prostate, and seminal vesicles. What's genuinely fascinating here is how clearly the labor is divided among these different departments. The testes are the primary sex organs, right? They hold the germinal cells that actually manufacture the sperm, but the product is far from finished when it leaves there. It moves into the epididymis for maturation. After that, well, it needs packaging and transport fluids, and that's exactly where the accessory glands come in. The prostate and seminal vesicles don't actually make sperm at all. Instead, they manufacture the vital fluids that protect, nourish, and transport the sperm during ejaculation.
Moving right along to Section 2, Sertoli cells, the caretakers.
Deep inside the testes, coiled up within 900 tiny seminiferous tubules, we find the true unsung heroes of this factory, the Sertoli cells. If you want to understand how they work, the MAIA mnemonic is your ultimate key. You see, these cells aren't just passively sitting there. They are actively pumping out a very precise cocktail of chemicals to manage the entire factory floor.
So let's unpack that MAI acronym. First up, M. They secrete MIS, or malaria-inhibiting substance, which actually stops the formation of female sex organs during early development. Then we have the A's. They secrete androgen-binding protein to concentrate testosterone exactly where it's needed most, and aromatase to convert hormones. Finally, the A and I, activin and inhibin, which regulate complex chemical feedback loops with the brain. But wait, beyond those chemical signals, Sertoli cells are basically the ultimate protectors and nutritionists. They physically form a blood-testis barrier with tight junctions, keeping the body's immune cells from attacking the developing sperm. Plus, they supply massive amounts of glycogen for energy, and they even clean up the factory floor by phagocytizing or eating up defective cells. It's an incredible support system.
Now for Section 3, Spermatogenesis, the assembly line.
With our caretakers working hard, let's fire up the machines. We can look at this process kind of like a flipbook, starting with the very first stages, proliferation and growth. It all begins with these primitive germ cells called spermatogonia. Inside the testes, these cells undergo mitotic division. Basically, they are just multiplying, creating exact carbon copies of themselves with a full set of 46 chromosomes. This step is crucial because it ensures the factory always has a massive baseline inventory of raw material, which then bulks up and grows into what we call primary spermatocytes.
That brings us to the stage of maturation, and this is a massive turning point. The primary spermatocytes now go through 2 rounds of meiotic division. In meiosis, the cell doesn't just copy itself, it actually halves its genetic material. It goes from 46 chromosomes down to just 23 chromosomes, forming secondary spermatocytes and then spermatids. This has to happen, right? Because eventually, a sperm must combine with a 23-chromosome egg to create a healthy 46-chromosome human being.
Finally, we hit the most visually dramatic phase of the whole line, the stage of transformation, which is also known as spermiogenesis. What's wild here is that there is absolutely zero cell division happening. Instead, it's just pure metamorphosis. The round, bulky spermatids are enveloped by those helpful Sertoli cells and physically completely reshaped. They shed all their excess heavy cytoplasm. They reorganize their nuclear chromatin into a tight, highly compact head, and they collect the remaining membrane to spin out a long tail.
To make sure we lock this in, let's do a rapid-fire review of the assembly line's 4 distinct phases. First up, proliferation, where raw materials multiply. Second, growth, where the primary cells bulk up. Third, maturation, where the genetic material is cut in half through meiosis. And fourth, transformation, where the cell physically metamorphosizes into a streamlined, aerodynamic machine. The end result of this incredible assembly line is the mature spermatozoon, and it is a total masterpiece of biological minimalism. You've got a compact head carrying those 23 chromosomes, capped with an acrosome, which acts like a chemical battering ram used for fertilization. Just behind that is the middle piece, densely packed with the mitochondrial spiral. Think of those mitochondria as the battery packs. They provide the immense burst of energy needed to whip the principal piece, or tail, propelling the whole thing forward. But here is the thing. A state-of-the-art assembly line is completely useless if you can't deliver the product. At this point, the newly formed sperm are released into the lumen of the seminiferous tubule. But here's the major catch. They still aren't fully functional. They are basically like sports cars, fresh off the line, with no gas in the tank and no keys in the ignition. So what actually happens after the sperm leaves the factory?
Let's find out in Section 4, Maturation and Capacitation.
This brings us to the crucial post-production phases of maturation, packaging, and delivery. Our product has a very long journey ahead. As the sperm travels, it receives some vital additions to form semen. First, the seminal vesicles chip in about 60% of the total fluid volume. Think of this as a packed lunch for the journey. It is absolutely loaded with fructose to provide nutrition and energy for those little mitochondrial battery packs we just talked about. It also adds prostaglandins and ascorbic acid. Then the prostate gland steps up to contribute another 20% of the volume. The prostate adds an alkaline fluid to neutralize harsh, acidic environments, along with clotting enzymes to keep the semen together upon delivery and fibrinolysin to eventually dissolve that clot later on.
But the fluids aren't everything. There are 2 distinct biological upgrades the sperm themselves must undergo. First, as they pass through the 6-meter-long coiled tube of the epididymis, they undergo maturation. This grants them their crucial motility, literally the ability to swim. But guess what? Even then, they are not quite ready to fertilize an egg. The final, ultimate step is called capacitation. And interestingly enough, this doesn't even happen in the male body at all. Capacitation, the physiological changes that grant the sperm the true ability to penetrate and fertilize the egg, only occurs after the sperm has entered the female genital tract. Pretty amazing, right?
Finally, Section 5, the power of testosterone.
So, we've seen the factory floor, the caretakers, the assembly line, and the shipping department. But who is actually running the show? The chief executive of the entire male reproductive system is, without a doubt, testosterone. It's produced by the interstitial cells of Leydig, which hang out just outside the seminiferous tubules. Its role completely changes depending on the timeline of a person's life. During embryonic life, driven by hormones from the placenta, fetal testosterone is responsible for the critical differentiation of sex. It dictates the development of the penis, scrotum, prostate, and vesicles, and actually stimulates the descent of the testes into the scrotum. After that heavy lifting, it largely goes quiet until puberty, where it kicks back into overdrive to develop primary and secondary sexual characteristics.
And testosterone's influence extends far, far beyond the reproductive factory itself. It has these sweeping systemic effects across the entire body. It acts on the central nervous system, influencing behavior and aggression. It drives hair growth on the body, though ironically, it can actually contribute to baldness on the scalp. It thickens the skin, deepens the voice, increases your basal metabolic rate, and promotes erythropoiesis, which is the production of red blood cells. It even drives the development of increased muscle mass and a heavier, stronger bone structure, specifically shaping the male pelvis. It is literally impacting the whole shebang.
Before we wrap up, we have to look at one very specialized mechanism. While testosterone is incredibly powerful on its own, sometimes the body needs a more potent, specialized signal. In certain target tissues, an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase converts testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. DHT then binds to receptors to drive specific external virilization, things like facial hair growth, and the development of the penis and prostate. Think of DHT as a specialized local manager executing specific orders right there on the ground.
Wow. We have toured an incredibly complex biological factory today, from those very first mitotic divisions all the way to the massive whole-body influences of testosterone. Every single step requires absolute precision, perfect temperature control, and a wildly delicate balance of chemical feedback loops. Which leaves us with a really compelling question.
If this intricate factory has evolved to run so precisely on such delicate hormonal cues, how might modern environmental factors, stress, and lifestyle changes be disrupting this ancient biological balance? Just a little something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.